How to score duckpin bowling, the Serpentine Method. The Serpentine Scoring Method, or S method, has simplified duckpin scoring with its natural visual grid and flow of scoring potentials with the strike, spare, and set points. Its S-shaped scoring grid is divided into 3 segments for each row per frame. These segments are then categorized based on the row's earning potential. Strikes, 10 plus 2, spares, 10 plus 1, and set points. First row on top of the S is the strike zone, and it's the only opportunity to achieve a strike and earn points from the next 2 additional rows. The second row in the middle of the S is the spare zone. It's the last chance to clean up any missed pins from your first row, and it's your last chance to earn points from the next row only. So when it comes to a spare, you only get 1 bonus roll. The third row at the bottom of the S is the set zone. If you don't get a strike with your first roll or spare with your second roll, then all of your points earned from all 3 rows are accumulated here, and there are no bonus points. I like to refer to the set zone as what you hit is what you get. If you're a visual learner like me, then the Serpentine method also clearly illustrates where the bonus points for strikes and spares originate and how they contribute to your frame's overall score. Earning potential for strikes. So a strike is 10 points plus 2 additional rolls. Your first roll, you knock down 1, so you fill in the spare section or the second section on the S. And with your second roll, you roll 2, then you fill in the set section of the S. So if you look at this clearly shows that each section, the strike zone, each zone, the strike zone, the spare zone, and the set zone for a frame has to be filled in. So you may be thinking, but Kira, what if I get like a gutter ball and I don't hit any frames? That's fine. If that happens, then it still will be filled in, but it will be a dash. Okay? And points, just to add to this, the total points for this particular frame would be whatever the points were in the prior frame, so that ending balance or that ending total, plus 10 points for the strike, plus 1 point for the first roll, plus 2 points for the second roll. So it would be the prior points plus 10 plus 1 plus 2. And that will be your total points for this particular frame, for example. Earning potential for spares. So in this example, you knocked down 3 pins the first time on your first roll. Then you cleaned it up, meaning that you knocked down all remaining pins. So there were 7 pins remaining. So you can either put a 7 or a slash. Either way, you get 10 points for that spare. Now, the only thing that's remaining is your 1 roll that will come from the next frame. So that's where that 4 comes from. That 4 came from your first roll in the next frame. And you knock down 4 pins, so that's why we have a 4. So in this example, the total points for this frame will be your ending total points in your prior frame plus 10, or you can break that 10. It came from your first roll with the 3, then a 7. That's the 10 plus 4. The prior points in the prior frame plus 10 points for the spare plus the 4. That is how you get your total points earned for this frame where you got a spare. So let's move on to seeing how this all works from frame 1 to 10. We're going to give you a very detailed example. Okay? So in frame 1, on your first roll, you rolled a 2. On your second roll, you rolled a 3. In your third roll, you rolled a 5. Now, this is an example of a set because you didn't get a spare, you didn't get a strike, so you get what you hit. And so you hit all 10 pins, but you did it in 3 turns, so therefore your total score is only 10. There are no bonus points. In the second frame, you actually earned a strike. So with a strike, you now have to fill in the spare zone and the set zone, and that will come from your first 2 rolls from frame 3. So in frame 3, the first roll, you rolled a 3. And on your second roll, you rolled a 1. So those scores following the red arrows are now placed. The 3 is placed in the spare zone and the 1 is placed in the set zone. Now frame 2 is complete. So now we need to calculate the score for frame 2. Remember, it includes your prior frame score plus your strike, which is 10 points, plus your spare zone and your set zone. So that will be 10 from frame 1, 10 for the strike in frame 2, plus 3 plus 1 that came from frame 3, and that's a total of 24. And if you look at the bottom of the S, I gave you my cheat sheet from how to see it visually when you're calculating, when you're adding everything up. All right, so let's move on to frame 3. In frame 3, you already have a 3 in the strike zone. You have a 1 in the spare zone. So now you just need to roll your third roll. And you knock down 5 pins. So to calculate frame 3, you need your prior point total, which is 24 from frame 2. Now you add in what you rolled in frame 3. So you add in a 3, 1, and 5. When you add those totals together, you now have 33 in frame 3. Moving on to frame 4. In frame 4, your first roll was a 7, your second roll was a 2, your third roll was a 3. When you add those numbers or those pins that were knocked down to the total number from your prior frame, which was 33, you now have 43. Now, remember, even though you have a total of 10, you got 10 in 3 rolls. So it's not a strike and it's not a spare, so therefore you don't get any bonus rolls. Moving on to frame 5, You rolled a 1 again, and another 1. So therefore, you ended with 43 in frame 4. Now we're going to add 3 from frame 5, and now your total for frame 5 is 46. Moving on to frame 6. In frame 6, your first roll was a 3, your second roll was a 5, and your third roll was 0. So where I have 0, it can either be 0 or a dash, which is what I referenced to earlier. So calculating, we know we need the prior total, which is 46, and we add in everything that we knocked down in frame 6. So that would be 46 plus 3 plus 5 plus 0, which gives us a total of 54. So as of frame 6, our total is 54. That's our score. In frame 7, the first roll was a 1. Your second roll was a 3. Your last roll is 2. So we know that we need the prior frame's total, which in frame 6, it was 54, plus 1, plus 3, plus 2. That gives us 60. Our total score in frame 7 is 60. Moving on to frame 8. Oh my gosh. In frame 8, we didn't score anything. So it's 0, 0, 0. Gutter ball, gutter ball, gutter ball. So 60 plus 0 is 60. So we didn't earn any pins or points. So our score is still 60. Moving on to frame 9. In frame 9, the first roll was a 6. The second roll was a spare. So we know that we cleaned it up, and we cleaned it up by knocking down the remaining 4 pins, because you can only get 10. That's your total points for a strike or a spare is 10. So whatever was remaining has to be the difference between 10 minus the frames that you originally hit with your first roll. Cleaning it up is your second roll, and it's whatever that difference is. So in this case, the difference was 4. Now that's in the spare zone. And we know that when we get a spare, we get bonus points from the very next roll. And just so happened, in the very next roll, it was a 4. So you see the red line? It is actually pointing to the set zone in frame 9, because that's where that 4 came from frame 10, from the first roll. Okay? So to calculate our total in frame 9, we need what? The prior total points from frame 8. So that is 60. Plus 10 for the spare that we got in frame 9, and 4 points from the very first roll from the 10th frame. And that's how we come up with 74. Now don't forget, if you need to visually see how the calculation is working, just look right down above the total of 74, and you see 60 from frame 8, 10 from the spare, and then that's from frame 9, then also 4 from frame 10, and that's how you get 74. Moving on to the 10th frame. So the 10th frame, we already know that we rolled 4. That was the first roll. Now, the second roll, we rolled 3, and unfortunately, it's a gutter ball on the third roll. So, what do we end the game with? Like, what's our final score? So, we know we need the 74 from the prior frame, plus 4, plus 3. That gives us 81. Okay, so that wraps it up for the Serpentine method, a very easy way to keep score for duckpin bowling. If you like this method, if it made sense to you, if it resonated with you, just put Serpentine method in the comments for me. Listen, I hope that the Serpentine method did exactly what I said that it will do. That the visual grid of the S followed the natural flow of scoring, of the scoring potential, where you realize that strikes are first, is at the top, spares are second, and set points, what you hit is what you get. If that makes sense to you, just put that in the comments. What you hit is what you get when it comes to that third frame. Because honestly, I had to figure out the purpose of it. Like, I needed to give it a purpose. And for me, it really just closes out that frame. Also, if the earning potential for the strike and the spare, if that makes sense, put that in the comments as well, that the earning potential makes sense. And last but not least, if you found this video helpful in any capacity, give it a like. And if you think that your fellow bowler could benefit from this information, please share. This is how we make extraordinary bowlers even greater. Thank you so much for watching. I am Kira, and this is Bowling for Beginners.